What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and this video I want to rank the top 20 games that I played in 2024. It's actually quite a list, and some of these moments you'll see, or some of these numbers, were kind of difficult to land on. I'll go over them as we reach them. But okay, some quick rules, and I mean, it should be kind of obvious. These are games that I've experienced, and I think besides maybe one or two, these are games that I've played from beginning to end, or at least have an incredibly high, like, I feel good about my opinion on them. I don't think it's going to massively shift while beating it or not beating it, or whatever. So that's kind of where I stand. But games like Persona 3 Reload, Disney's Epic Mickey, just some examples. Games that I didn't play, or that I even have actually, but I still haven't played yet. So that's kind of how I broke it down. Again, most of these games I have beaten, or at least I have a pretty strong opinion, and I feel good about where I put it on the ranking. Okay, enough rambling. Let's get through this list. Number 20, I'm actually going to put Call of Duty here. This is the first Call of Duty I've played in a long time. I said that leading into the game, and I had fun. I think this is just a fun game. The single player was kind of weird, to be honest with you, but that's, it's coming from somebody that hasn't played these games in a long time. It was fun. The multiplayer it's very much the same in my opinion. Back playing, Modern Warfare 2, late 2000s, early 2010s. I think it still feels the same. I'm actually pretty okay at it. You would think I'm terrible, but I actually kind of in like the middle, of the team generally. And then the single player, like I said, kind of going more Halo, I felt. I don't know if that's like a common opinion, but kind of these like semi-open world map structures. You have your main objective, but you can handle it differently. You're going to be like finding weapons in the environment. I don't know. It didn't always land for me, but, it still had the signature Call of Duty, kind of moments. It was a fun game, okay? Kind of the definition of it, I would say. And actually, I think a lot of these games that are in this 2019-18 are like this. Number 19, Rise of the Ronin. Another game that I think is honestly maybe severely underappreciated. There's probably nothing outrageously amazing about this game. I mean, the combat is definitely way above average. I guess you could say that. Nothing else. And that's okay. It's a prime example, okay, of a game that does one or two things like really well, right? It's kind of that classic 7 out of 10 type stuff. Now, I don't give scores. I'm not giving it a 7. But when I think about, those like fine games, right? They nail a couple things. Rise of the Ronin's combat is a lot of fun. It's challenging. It's a little bit different, or you've experienced something like it before, but not exactly, right? It kind of carves its own thing there. But, it's kind of rough around the edges, right? Like the story's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The open world, I mean, there's enough stuff to do. It's like a hybrid Assassin's Creed Ghost of Tsushima type thing, but with the visuals, I would say, are pretty lacking. It looks like a game made in like the PS3 360 era. And again, like that's I mean, you could argue, I guess, if that's okay. I think it's okay for this game because the game does stand out where it needs to, but it's just nothing massively special, right? It's a game I kind of will remember because I do feel like it came and went and nobody really cared, but at the same time, I actually think it was quite fun, like I said, with Call of Duty. Okay, number 18, I'm actually going to put Life is Strange Double Exposure here. I don't know how people will feel about this one, but I will stand by a lot of the things I said, when the game first came out. I made like 50 videos on this game. I actually really liked this game for most of it, and I think if the final episode or final chapter, right, chapter 5, if it wasn't the way that it was, I think chapters 1 through 4 actually put this game higher than where it is right now on the list. It's where it didn't stick the landing, but there's always going to be something special about returning to Max Caulfield and like seeing her for the first time in so long in a new way. And when it was announced at the Xbox event in June, I mean, I almost had tears in my eyes. I mean, truly, like hearing that voice and being like, my dear God, like they're bringing her back. Did it go the way I wanted? Not the whole time. At parts definitely, but not the whole thing. So was it a disappointing game? At times it was, but there also was something pretty special about it. It's just they definitely missed some opportunities. They missed some moments, I would say, in general. And in terms of that final chapter, I just don't think they stuck the landing at all. So that hurts it. It would have been much higher, if it was a bit more consistent. Okay, number 17, I'm putting Harry Potter Quidditch Champions. Another fine, fun game. I will say it's a game that I thought I would play more of, but it's tough because, like, and I think I'm allowed to say it now, I played a lot of this game in like the betas of the world that this game participated in over the last like whatever it was, year and a half, 2 years. I put a lot of hours. In fact, I probably put the same amount of hours in the early testing of it than I did, now when the base game came out. But it is a blast. I do think they did it, like in terms of like what Quidditch is and trying to translate it into a game. It's not perfect, and they had to change some things about the structure of Quidditch, but I think it's fun. I think again, I just don't think it necessarily lasted as long as it could have. I mean, it's obviously still ongoing, but I did think I would play it more. But it's kind of like that multiplayer game just in the background. You could jump in for a couple matches, jump out, don't play it for a month or two, come in, play it over a weekend, leave again. I mean, it's kind of that game anyway, right? And again, I think for what it is, it's really fun. I still think the game is definitely a good game. Okay, number 16, I'm doing the Plucky Squire. This is a game that's kind of just like lingering around, just hanging out there. I put it when I did my Game of the Year awards, a few days ago on the channel. I did I think it won my most innovative, just because I think it's one of the most different games. Okay, things like TMNT, like Splintered Fate, like these are games that I wanted to play that I didn't. Right, some of the ones that really like Balatro or Balatro, however you say it, right? Those games, change some stuff, right? They take something that like a poker, let's say, right, and make it something different. So those are games I try to play a couple of them a year, and I know there's like dozens, even maybe more than dozens, right? Pacific Drive, other games that maybe came out this year, and those are games that a lot of them I didn't play this year. Again, I try to nail a few of them, but I can't get to all of them. Plucky Squire was that one to me, and I think it's honestly really, really cool. I think it's a great story. It's basic in a lot of ways, but also it does a lot of things differently. I love the art style, right? The visuals. I love the fact that the game kind of changes a couple different times depending on if you're in the book, out of the book. It constantly moves. It's constantly doing something a little bit different, and you've kind of seen parts of it before, like in terms of the style, but you've never quite seen it like this. So I want to give it props. I think it's a really, really fun and really good game. At number 15, I'm doing Space Marine 2. Now this is one that might get hurt just because of the lack of time that I put into the game. Okay, so granted, and I should probably say that it could definitely move up, but this is I think you could tell from what I said about the Plucky Squire and maybe even Life is Strange. We're not in really all of these games. We're not in a bad territory. We're not even in like an average territory. I think we're in above average territories. I think Space Marine 2 is a ton of fun. I actually played more like literal multiplayer, like team deathmatch type stuff. I actually did that way more than I thought I would. I played it with a close friend of mine, and we had an absolute blast. The game is just fun. I think the scale that it puts you on, in the campaign and stuff, it's big. It's something, again, I haven't really experienced as much as I probably need to, and it's something, I can go back to, I think, over time, but I had a lot of fun with it, and I don't regret my purchase. And honestly, I kind of put the other game that's similar to this right next to it, number 14, Helldivers 2. Same thing. I think this game is extremely good. I think, I talked about it a lot. Granted, I didn't actually put my money where my mouth is in terms of doing it. I think the game really changes the more you play it, the harder levels, just the longer you invest in this game or the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And, like the clips online of some of the, again, like the harder difficulties and just you being like completely freaking ambushed and just everything that kind of comes along with it. You've got to play it more than I've played it. I have not played this game as much as I've wanted to. I haven't jumped in like with the major updates that have happened. So those are things I've got to fix, but the game is just like rock solid, right? The game is just so super tight, beautiful visuals, and just really fun, even on the easier difficulties, even in your first, 10, 15, 20 hours, the game is still a blast to play. I think it just kind of gets better and better the more that you put into it. And I do think if I put more time into it, this would be one that would actually rise a little bit higher in my rankings. And this one was kind of tough, by the way. I said I made some tough decisions. I was wondering where to put Helldivers, Space Marine, and also this next one. So number 13, I actually put Hellblade 2. And I think it's just because when I think about it, it did stick with me. I stand by everything. I reviewed this game. I liked my review personally, but I think this game in a lot of ways is unnecessary, and that probably does hurt it overall. Thinking back to the first Hellblade, I really love it. I think it's really, really different. The mental health stuff, but also just the visuals and the storytelling style is very unique. Okay, to Ninja Theory and to this game, and even to the sequel. But at the same time, I can't help shake. And I said this when the game came out. I feel like it's very unnecessary to have even done a Hellblade 2 with the story that they told. I mean, it was fine, and a lot of the things in this game were fine, but also, again, it is a game that actually kind of sticks with me. Like, I think of the performances, I think of the visuals. I mean, this is cutting edge technology. I mean, that's kind of a cliche thing to say, but it really is, right? I mean, like, it looks unreal, unbelievably good. And for what it's worth too, like, the combat, I never didn't like the combat in the first game. It is what it is. I mean, it's definitely a system that you could enhance a little bit. But you know what? I kind of think they did that. Again, it still is what it is, and it's nothing absolutely unreal. But it's something that I kind of think about. I kind of think about, like, the visceral, like, hard hitting gameplay. And when I say hard hitting, like, you feel it. You feel the hits. You feel your hits on an enemy. And while the actual mechanics are nothing like too crazy at all, right? It's not deep. It's not anything that you're gonna really remember that part of things. But the impact of it, you might remember that stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's just a game that I think it definitely is a good game. Hellblade 2 is a good game. I would recommend it. Game Pass, all that jazz. But I just feel, as being, I would say, a pretty diehard fan of the first game, I just don't know if you needed to tell that story. And I feel like it's a franchise that should have, had the one and maybe should have just stopped there. All right, on to number 12, a late arrival, okay, and one that I'm really happy that it's actually this high. Number 12 is Marvel Rivals, a game that I think is just an absolute blast. Now, I've said that a couple times now. There's a reason, though, why this is higher than the games that are an absolute blast, like Helldivers or Space Marine, stuff like that. This game's just more fun to me. This game is a game that I actually can't believe it, to be honest with you. Again, if you watch the channel throughout the year, you can kind of tell where my mindset is, right, on certain games as we go into it, and then obviously afterwards. And I wanted to give Marvel Rivals a chance, and it looked fun from when we saw the actual gameplay. When the game was first announced, I wasn't into it. I'm not into these hero, like, Overwatch type things. I don't play them. It's not that I hate them, it's just I literally have no interest. It's just not something I do. It's not a disrespect thing. It's just not me. But I wanted to give this game a chance, and I did, and I think this game is a blast. I think it can get more messy. Like, I've seen a lot of people talking about just the, I don't know, like, rolling with heroes and all this, like, complex, hero, whatever you call these type of games. I don't know. I hear a lot of conversation, and honestly, actually, kind of a lot of negative conversation as the game has been out. I think it's gotten kind of like more hardcore, or so hardcore that now we have to fight about it. I'm still in that area where it's like, I don't really care, right? Like, I pop in, I play a couple matches. It's very fun. It's very fast. There's enough heroes. In fact, there's so many freaking heroes, and a lot of them are fun. It's not just like one or two. I can play as quite a few of these characters and have a lot of fun with it. So I'm not to the point where I'm like, a diamond rank and all of this stuff, and I'm complaining about all these features. And not saying it's not valid, but like, that's just not where I'm at. I never needed the game to do that for me. I don't care. Like, true, like, that's, at the end of the day, I don't care about a lot of that stuff, okay? Specifically with this game. So for what the game needed to do for me, it nailed all of it, and it did way better than I thought it was going to do, okay? This game, I did not expect. If you told me that this game would be number 12 on my list, I would have been pretty surprised. Okay, coming in at number 11 is Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. This one was tough. I wanted to, I thought it would maybe be a little bit higher, but I feel pretty darn good. Actually, I feel good with all of these games, in their ranking. Dragon Ball is, I actually said this in my Game Awards live stream, it's kind of like a quiet, almost like sneaky good game. Honestly, actually, you could say similar to Marvel Rivals in that the more you got into it, or the more hardcore players that I saw online, the more complaining there was. And again, I bring that up. It's nothing against. So you can have complaints. I do complaints all the time, throughout the year on the channel. But there are issues, with Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. But I think, again, for what I wanted it to be, I wanted that Tenkaichi or even Budokai, right? I wanted it back. And I played Budokai 1, 2, 3 leading into this game. And I don't know if it went, in fact, I don't think it went above and beyond, but it kind of did what it needed to do for me. And like, it just matched it, right? So while like Marvel Rivals kind of shocked me with going above, this game was like, okay, I wanted it to do certain things. It did, but it didn't really like give me anything more than what it I guess was kind of promising leading into it. So I still have a blast with this game. I still think this game is good. I wonder what kind of, legacy the game will leave. It's definitely selling like unreal. It'll probably be the highest selling anime fighter game, of all time, which is quite impressive. And maybe it deserves it to some people, maybe it doesn't, but I do think it's a good game. All right, the top 10, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, coming in at number 10. This is a game, in fact, this was the first game that came out, I think, that I played in 2024. So it's sometimes these early games, the January, February ones, sometimes they get left behind. I'm not gonna allow that, with my list here. But I think this game is honestly phenomenal. This is another one when I think about like Rise of the Ronin, I think about like Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden. I think to a couple games that are just kind of underappreciated, right? If you were to make a list for them, I think Prince of Persia would be on that list, because what it does for side scrollers, I mean, I think it's actually quite impressive. We are, I think, getting like oversaturated. At the Game Awards, we saw there's like a Pac-Man side scroller game coming out. There's a Ninja Gaiden one, and like a lot of these I check out. I like roguelikes. I like side scrollers. I like roguelike side scroller. I like a lot of these games, but when you do them, and there's so many of them now that come out every year, and I mean, kind of historically, they've always been a popular genre. You gotta bring something new to the table, and I think just the movement. I think the way that the character moves and the fighting style and the platforming, I think is just all extremely good. Like, this is a well above average game. This is one of the better Prince of Persia. I'm sorry to say it, for those I guess are mad at that. I really think this is one of the better Prince of Persia games that have ever come out. So number 9 is actually, I think, maybe the next game that came out in 2024 in that order, Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth. Early on, this was, top 5, top 6 game, but this was a game that could get like hit down when better games obviously came out. And I don't change actually any opinion. If you watched, I think I did like a mid-year list just like this, and I probably said the same thing. Infinite Wealth, I think it, in terms of like the formula of, I guess specifically Like a Dragon, like 7, right? I think that gameplay, it freaking nails. I love the turn-based, like doing it this way. I can do either. Okay, like The Man Who Erased His Name brought back that brawler type style. I can do either one. It's got all the things you want from a Like a Dragon or Yakuza game, right? It's got all the side activities. It's deep. I spent personally, 50, 60, 70 hours in the game, just like you can in all these games. It's got a lot going for it. And, it's number 9. It's pretty high on my list. The one main thing is that story. It definitely has its moments, okay? It's got its moments. It's got its big-time twists and big-time moments just in general. It's got fantastic characters. Every time they're able to, whether they have to create a brand new cast or bring in like a hybrid, like, an older cast mixed in with like brand new characters, which is kind of what they did here, right? Like, you have a couple new ones, but a lot of them are actually carryovers from the last game. They're great. They're a great cast. I just feel the story was not up to par with what I'm used to in these games. I've played so many of them, and I've played them all actually within the last like 2 or so years. I don't know. It just did not nail the story. It's great to see Kiryu back, but I don't think they nailed his story either. I'm not a huge fan of how they handled that. So yeah, that was the big thing. If they nailed the story, if I was walking away saying, yep, that's one of the better Yakuza stories they've ever done, this would be top 5, easily top 5, because the rest of the game is awesome, but the story was a really big letdown to me, and therefore the game slips a little bit. Okay, number 8, I'm going to do Black Myth: Wukong. I feel good about this one. I mean, a lot of these were a little tough. It's like, okay, where do you put Infinite Wealth, Black Myth, Stellar Blades coming up, stuff like that. The group between like 4 to 10, I think are actually kind of close. There's not too much keeping them apart. But Black Myth: Wukong, great game. A lot of fun. Very frustrating. Okay, this is a game that really pushed me, and but I do think it made its mark. I do want more of these games. I think they nailed that gameplay style, and I don't have too much more to say. Like, it pushed me. I mean, so much of this game, I think, is the challenge, and it's the exploration. It's finding these side bosses and these main bosses, and I think the level structure is good. I think they just did a really good. It's like a safe 8. Okay, I honestly think for Black Myth, I know a lot of people say it's their game of the year. It's definitely one of my favorite games of the year, but I do think there's a couple games that are a little bit better. Okay, number 7, I'm going to do Silent Hill 2 Remake. Now, my thing with remakes, right, when I do these lists, remasters I don't even count. In fact, actually, I played Dead Rising's remaster, which I thought was remaster, deluxe remaster, which was phenomenal, and it was really the first time from beginning to end that I played a Dead Rising game, and I freaking loved it. But it's very similar, right? So games that are remasters, I don't really consider for this. Remakes, I do. So Silent Hill 2, I just think is so freaking good. I mean, the original is so special. I replayed the original actually like a month before Silent Hill 2 came out, and I think they absolutely nailed it. I really think we need to do a case study of how wrong so many, including myself, I was so wrong, about Bloober Team. I've always loved Layers of Fear. I think the first Layers of Fear game is awesome. The second one is just kind of a derivative of the first one. But I really think, in terms of like proving us wrong, I think there was reason to be skeptical. It's Silent Hill 2 and, what they did with like the medium and stuff. Like they didn't give us all the signs that they were like ready for this, but they freaking nailed it. The acting, the writing, the visuals, the atmosphere. The game is one of the better games of the year easily, right? In fact, if you said it's your game of the year, I don't blame you at all, because the thing with me is, okay, the story is still pretty much the same, right? Like the writing, there's some additions here, subtractions here, but generally a big part of what makes Silent Hill 2 so special is still intact and like is a carryover from the original Silent Hill 2. So I don't think I could ever say, it's like the best game of the year, because we've played a good portion of it, in a sense. We've already done it. But I do think in terms of what they needed to do for a remake, they nailed it. When I think of the better remakes, of all time, when you go to Resident Evils and Shadow of the Colossus and all that stuff, this is one. Absolutely, this is one of the best remakes that's ever been created. And I think now this is like the coming out party for Bloober Team. Like they're ready to do some stuff that's truly special, and I think they're going to going forward. So if you heard how I talked about that, we are now, I definitely think, in the area of like highly, almost elite, borderline elite games, right? Number 6, Stellar Blade. I feel good about this spot. Again, Sway, actually, who was on the Game Awards live stream I did, this was his game of the year. I know it's a lot of people's game of the year. It's special. This is a very, very special game. It is a beautiful game. The soundtrack is freaking awesome. And the combat. So to me, it's really all about the combat and just about the feel. And I said this as we got into Stellar Blade, as we got into Black Myth. They're similar. They're similar, but I do prefer the combat style of Stellar Blade. It's just a little bit, tweaked, off of Black Myth, but I just really like the feel. I think it's highly rewarding. I think it's challenging. Absolutely. I got absolutely destroyed in the last probably 4 or 5 bosses, but it feels so good. All the fighting, whether it's just a common enemy or a mini boss or a boss, the game just feels so good, and it looks so good. The story, I know people are kind of split. Like if you really do that digging and you read everything that you pick up, I think there is potential for the story and the lore and stuff of Stellar Blade. I do think the delivery of it was not great in this game. I know, I think it kind of just depends on who you are. I think some people actually like the way that it was delivered, and some people don't. And I would say I'm more on that side. So that's really kind of what holds it back, is the story. The characters too. I mean, even like the acting, I tried to play it in English first, and I was like, I'm just not jiving. I actually did the Korean side of things, but I think the voice acting was actually really good there. So there's some, improvements that can be made. I think this can be the start of a really elite franchise if they double down and work on, I guess, keep actually what was so good about the original, and then just improve upon the weaknesses. Okay, top 5. Number 5, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Again, a reason why I wait to do these kind of videos and these game awards that I do and all this stuff until after all the games in 2024 have released. Jeff Keighley, are you listening? No, Indiana Jones, one of the latest games, right, along with Marvel Rivals, and what a joy. What a joy this game was. No, honestly, I mean, and they contacted me to give me a review code, and I was blown away. I did not think that was a possibility at all, so I'm grateful, but you know what? That doesn't change how I feel, and ultimately, it wouldn't actually matter. It's not like I'm doing it just to kiss up. No. The game's just good. This game is phenomenal, and I think, what it really did, okay, is I thought it was going to be good, or at least I want it to be good, but for a game like Indy, you don't really even know what it's going to be until you play it. So I was honestly blown away and just surprised, like the majority of the time, because it's a hard game to market. In fact, in terms of even right now, it's a hard game to show, because there is action. Like, the combat's really good. I love that brawler, fisticuffs type thing. I think it's really great. there's so much exploration, there's so much puzzle solving, there's, it's a perfect blend of Dishonored and Hitman, and that was something that I talked about in my own review, and turns out actually a lot of other people were saying it at the same time, right? So it just does such a good job, but it's not something I really thought was going to be that way, like leading in. Like, I didn't really know what the game was going to be. So I don't know. It was such a surprise. The voice acting, obviously, Troy Baker is Indy, phenomenal. The rest of the cast, phenomenal. The environments and jumping from place to place. Like I said, puzzle solving and just exploration. Just, the adventure side first and then the action side after. And I think they freaking nailed it. Really, one of the best games of the year easily. But we are in that category. So number 4, I'm putting Metaphor ReFantazio. And so this is one that I tried to wait as long as I could. Okay, I keep talking about, waiting as long as possible to do this. Metaphor is such a well-rounded, like, awesome game, okay? Now, I'm about 35 hours in. So the issue with Metaphor is I can absolutely see it becoming my game of the year depending on where it goes, right? I feel like I'm around halfway through, maybe like 35, 40% of the way. If I were to double it, where would I put it? I feel good about putting it here. I think this is kind of where it deserves to be based off what I've played. It's so well written. The characters are great. It's everything I needed it to be. Now, I will say, it hasn't, like, I've seen so much good stuff about it, and I don't doubt it. It's just that, the beginning of the game I think is phenomenal, right? Like the first 4 or 5 hours are unreal. And then it kind of just goes up and down. Like, there's moments, there's arcs, a lot of introductions of characters and stuff that are super, super good. I haven't gotten to a part that's really just jaw dropped me. And we're going to get there, right, with the rest of these games, kind of how they made me feel. Metaphor hasn't made me feel the same way as 1 through 3. Okay, now it has a chance to, but it hasn't done it yet based off what I've played, right? It's so consistently great though. Like a score out of 10, right? It's like the most 9 out of 10 at all times. It's not weak in any area, okay? The combat, the strategy that's involved, even like exploration and travel and hanging out with companions. I mean, it is unreal how just the formula they've nailed and improved upon from Persona, right? Like Persona 5, you think about all the strengths and then think about, okay, what if they enhanced those strengths, right? What if they, sanded out those edges a little bit? And that's what they did. So I think it's a great, great game. I have no doubt that it is people's game of the year and it probably deserves it. It's just, the second half of the game I still have to play. So I'm sure it can get there for me, but this is where it's at right now. Okay, final 3. Banishers Ghosts of New Eden is my number 3 game. This was, this was actually number 2, I would say, for a very, very long time. We'll get to number 2 in a second, but Banishers is so freaking good. By the time you guys see this video, I think I did just a standalone video again on Banishers. It is, in my opinion, the most underrated game of the year. It, as you can tell, like putting it number 3. Characters, story, so good. Some of the best writing I think you'll see in a game. Some of the best writing in 2024, but also kind of this generation. Some of the best characters of this generation with Red and Antea. I love it. I love it so much. The weakest element of it is just the combat, and the combat is just kind of an average version of God of War, and it's nothing bad. There's, this is another type of game, right, where they nail a couple things only this time, okay, for a game this high on my list. The things they nail are elite. So the writing is elite. It's better than most games this year. The characters are elite. It's better than most. And the consistency. This game is 20, 30 hours. There's a lot of side stuff. The side stuff is just as good as the main stuff. Well written throughout, right? So it nails a lot of that. The only thing it doesn't really nail, I would say, is probably the combat, and it's serviceable. It is what it needs to be, and that's kind of all that it is. So I think this is very well deserved of. I think you could say this is a game of the year for some people. I really do, but it's number 3 for me. Number 2, Astrobot. This one, Astrobot, and then number 1, I'll just say it to get out of the way, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I did a video specifically on Rebirth. I'll get there in a second. Astrobot is such a joy. It's so much fun. I love it. You smile like the whole time. I feel like Buddy the Elf, right? I just feel like smiling. You smile so much when playing Astrobot. It takes me back to my youth. I see people talk about like kids games and stuff. I mean, number 1, there's nothing wrong with kids games, and number 2, I think anybody can play Crash Bandicoot. I think anybody anybody can play Spyro, Sly, Astrobot, any of these games. Now, I grew up on Crash Bandicoot, and now I'm playing Astrobot, and I don't know. I think again, beauty and how it looks, the controller. I mean, it's something actually I forget to talk about with Astrobot so much. The controller and what they do with the DualSense is 10 times better than anybody else on the planet. Like, they're the only ones that actually care, and it shows, right? The levels, so diverse. The specialty levels, Uncharted, God of War, etc. Loco Roca, like, so good. The respect to PlayStation and its heritage, the respect to gaming, right? And just all that's come before it. And then bringing, I would say, platformers, like, to it really is one of the best platformers I think ever created. It's one of the best in the last, 10, 15 years. Obviously there's the comparisons to Mario and stuff. It deserves it. It really, really does. The game is so unbelievably good. And then number 1, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And I'll keep this short again because I did a standalone video on the game. Another game that I would say, like Banishers, nails a lot of things, and a couple things it doesn't, right? This game does have bloat. This game does have kind of adding some things to the open world just to do it, not really to enhance the game. It actually kind of slows the game down at times, but the way this game makes me feel, okay, and I said this in my standalone video on it, the way it makes me feel is unlike any other game, and that's what makes it stand out. When I think about this game, when I thought about it a month after I beat it, and I was thinking about that ending and the story and the characters, the cast is so lovable, so good. When I think about some of the best casts of all time, I think the Final Fantasy VII, this version too, right? I mean, like, they're so iconic originally, and hence why they remade in the first place, but, the work that was put into the writing and the acting, right, the voice actors that did them, so lovable and so memorable, right? And then just, again, like, the way that it makes you feel. But, I talk a lot about the last 3 or so hours because I think it's just, like, jaw-dropping, moments, but it's the journey. This game is about the journey and then also the destination, right? Like, when things finally boil over, my God, it's something. But also, what about how you got there? And I think that's really, really good about this game, too. Queen's Blood, obviously freaking elite. The combat in this game is actually insanely good, right? So it's just it's a very well-rounded game. It has standout moments, and it's a game that I think about. It's a game that, like, actually made an impact on me. And a couple, I would say, some of these top games, on my list, Astrobot absolutely did this, not necessarily, I guess, the same thing. I guess that's what I was going to say. It made an impact. It definitely made an impact on me. It made a different impact than Final Fantasy, right? But that's what these top games, I think, did to me, is, like, left me with something long term. So there you go. Long video. I'm going to rest my throat now. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.